On with the vendor report. Gary, Spencer Salt.
Also from the talk I gave on the CW variants at a previous convention, which is the best I could do, I've actually produced some models so you can actually physically see them. Okay, there's a 1915 and there's a 1921 two variant with a timber underframe and a 1921 with a steel underframe. That's based on photos that I've seen that some of the 21s survived. So if you want to talk to me about the details, also I've got a prototype GT van down there which I'm doing. Which is
volunteered to talk today, and very kindly, I think he doesn't do a lot of track planning in O-scale, but I think he's got some ideas. So, great.
Okay, so I'm originally from the bush, moved down to where I now live about 5 years ago, and I've been active in track planning probably for about 20 years. My start in track planning came because I live in the bush and there were no models around. We had an 8-bedroom home and I have a track plan for every room in that, or where we come from anyway. So, from that I started offering my services to all and sundry. I've probably been doing track planning for about 10, 12 years or more. Most of my clients are in Australia. During this year I have started planning for people in the United States as well. These are the areas that I want to deal with and talk to you about. Some of the pictures here are pictures of my layout. This is the cutting at Hilltop with a rail motor travelling through some orchard area. One of the things that I have had trouble with over many years is people giving me precise measurements of the space they have. What I require from people when they need a design is a accurate measurement of their room down to the last 5 millimetres. I ask people to check the squareness of their space because the design that I give them is based on a square or a rectangle, right? There are a large number of people who have the ability to be able to use a single bedroom. Now, a single bedroom nominally is about 3 by 3. Some of them are a bit bigger. So we're looking at about 10, 11, 12 square metres at the absolute maximum. When you convert, these are HO layouts by the way, when you convert that to HO, you're looking at about an 8 metre passing length. When he first asked me to do the layout for him, he was relying on the builder's drawings, the architect's plans. After I produced the plans and he started doing bench work, he found that the benches he'd built were too big for the room. During the building phase of the house, they'd stolen an extra 500 for the kitchen, which was on the other side. So the garage was narrower. So 3,200 narrow as opposed to 3,700. Access to the layout room is really important. There's many things that interfere with the planning process for any layout. I've already talked to you about the position of doors. The ideal place for a door is either in a corner or slap bang in the middle of the room, providing the room is wide. Windows are normally irrelevant. Most people are happy to run past the windows with their backboard. There are some occasions where people need to get access to a window for whatever reasons, but I haven't come across too many of those. Similarly in this attic, this is at Annandale in Sydney. One of the things I've resorted to over the years is photos. That's why when the original plan was done, if you look up in that top left corner, I've drawn the cupboard in, that's the grey area, and the layout runs across the top of the cupboard, aisle width. If you have a look around at the person sitting next to you and across the way, you'll find we're all different shapes. Someone who's 11'97" and weighs 150 kilos is not going to fit into narrow aisleways. In that picture there, that aisle is 1 metre wide. Operator reach, very important. when you're building your layout, anything further than that, where you have rolling stock that's falling over, or you've got turnouts that are a bit sus, or even when you're building landscaping, it's a bit tricky. I tell people we don't need to reach into the layout more than about 800 mil. Bench height. I never get involved in telling people what bench height, because bench height is one of those really personal things, and it does depend on how tall you are, and it does depend on what you want to look at in the layout. Okay, so you need to make a decision with your own layout. This has got nothing to do with the plan in reality, but you make a decision whether you want to look up at the rolling stock, look into the windows and see the passengers in the diner with the lights on their table, or whether you want to look down on roofs. Many people choose to look down on roofs. Okay, now I know that you're all low scalers. I want you to contemplate you trying to design a continuous layout in a single bedroom. It can't happen. One of the things that we have to take account of is using all sides of the room. So with that drawing like that, there's our 600 there and another one there with enough space in here. Let me just show you some numbers on how you can work out whether or not the curve is too big. If we allow for an 800 aisle, and 800 is just a number at this stage, and we take the 800 off that, we're left with 200. That's the width of the layout on the opposite wall. This is for a client in Western Victoria who was in the concrete business. He moved around from town to town because that was his job. He was a really keen model railroader, and he'd had enough of building a bit of a layout in a bedroom in the house he was in and then having to pull it down to move on. So he bought a 40-foot container. You're all familiar with containers, they've got two doors that open. He decided that this left-hand door here, he would keep it closed, and this door here would be the entrance. If you have a look at that there, that is a continuous layout. Grade. Grade's one of those things that a lot of people ignore. Grade is one of those things that I think adds interest and is landscaping opportunities. So you're probably all familiar with this, but I'll just run through it again. Grade is run, in other words, the horizontal run and the vertical distance. And I try and incorporate grades in the design when I'm working with people, because it gives a lot more run and it does give great opportunities for landscaping. Okay, I don't get involved in bench work, although I have been asked to create plans of how benches could be fitted underneath layouts. Oh, thank you.
I never saw it, but I got an image of 1 year ago. They had a big O-scale layout.
Do you know who that is, John?
No, I don't, no.
Thanks, guys. Look, it's fabulous to see everybody here today. It really is. Next up is Marty.
Morning, everyone. So some of you might remember from the forum back in April that I had visited Terry Flynn about a week before the forum. He explained to me how the wiring worked. Now, I had already understood exactly how the bench worked, but I had to figure out the wiring. Terry got it all explained to me. And I think the two people who were most surprised were both Terry and myself when a week later I had two modules, no track yet properly laid, but two prototype modules to show, and I demonstrated them here, setting them up with vinyl, and yeah, I was surprised at the results we got. The one that I finished for today is a simple diorama. The top module weighs only 6.5 kilos, so it's very easy for one person to carry, and the pair of trestle legs only came in at 3 kilos, which was fantastic. Today we're talking about the Fremo Aus7 modules. This is just sort of a working title. This is a new concept for a lot of us. First of all, modular railways are not designed to be a permanent layout. You can set them up and leave them, but they're different from the permanent layout. They're portable and transportable, importantly, by design. Okay, so you can see what I've brought here. Dave Powers helped me carry all my bits and bobs in this morning, and it took all of about 15 minutes to set up. And it lowers the barrier to entry for the people who want to have layouts and enter into the model railway hobby. The fact is, a lot of us who are the younger generation, a lot of us don't own our own homes, a lot of us rent, a lot of us move every few years because of the nature of work, and we just can't build a traditional permanent layout because, you know, in knowing that in about 7 years we're probably going to have to tear it down and shift it. But it also adds the social aspect of the hobby. So down in Melbourne, a similar concept has been going on with 009 scale, with the popular range released by Bachmann and all from the UK, and it's very popular with young modelers. A lot of them are all under 35. A guy you might have seen on YouTube called Will James, he basically got that all up and running. It's based on a similar concept, but of course different specifications. And the interesting thing is that you don't have a home layout, but you get together at, let's say, in Victoria's case, they got together at the Amara Club rooms for the weekend, set up their modules, had a great social weekend running trains. They did the same thing with a couple of different model railway exhibitions. So it breaks that stereotype of the model train guy being, you know, the loner in his garden shed, you know, hiding away from the world. But it's a very social hobby now. But this is sort of demonstrating what you could potentially do if you wanted to build a set of 3 modules. You could put 2 points, even the Pico medium radius, 6-foot radius ones, and have an Inglenook shunting layout if that's what you want to do. This one just showing the module upside down. So this one here that's upside down is now that module on display. I added some strengthening ribs just to see if it added a lot of rigidity or additional strength. I don't think they're strictly necessary. I used 50mm foam from Bunnings, which you can buy for about $30 a sheet. This is the first time they were shown publicly back at Rose Hill. And first show at Rose Hill, 2024. We called it layout under construction demonstration for the purposes of the show.
What I encountered was this, the front pony bogie. I couldn't find the instructions on how to put it together.
It's in the instructions.
3 days ago I found the instructions on how to put it together on the first page. I will say the exploded diagrams you get in there are really good. They're quite clear, quite precise, but you do get caught out. On the exploded diagrams, it tells you the numbers and everything to put the brake rigging on one side only. I then went, oh, hold on a second, there's brake rigging on both sides, so you same numbers on the other side. I must say the chassis is now together. Last time I ever built a steam loco chassis, I had to elongate the holes to get them to spin round. I have not elongated those holes. Those connecting rods have been put on first time, and it runs beautifully.
Class 5583 is a very impressive model, and Bob, would you like to come up and receive a award? There we go. All right, rolling stock. Chris Siebel presented a HCX built from a kit and very well painted and detailed.
Put your HCX behind that. Okay.
There is a very impressive Deer Valley Railway over there, or cannery, or whatever it is.
It's in a can.
Jeff, would you like to come up and receive an award?
I'm not in the competition.
Well,
Sorry, you brought it here, it's in the competition.
it's a diorama, it's in the competition, because I decided it was. So, congratulations, very well detailed and all in the size of, I think it's an IKEA apple box because I've got one of those. Right, so we have one more, and that was for railway structure or line side structure, and Bob Hendy is a very impressive signal up there. And very fortuitously, it's a black and white version of the...
That's good. Too much sun. Yep.
I had a little moment this morning. As I was going past Campbelltown turnoff on the way from Picton, I was fumbling in my pockets. This is not going where you think it is. And I realised that my SD card that was in the computer is still in the computer for this presentation. So if you wouldn't mind imagining images on the screen. So you've got to be pretty good at imagination. Just going to give you a couple of graphics so that you understand where I'm coming from. And in 3D parlance, there are 3 axes on the printer, and they're standard. The vertical axis is the Z, and the XY goes X to that way, and the Y goes lengthways on the printer. Now, there are a few terminologies. Bed slinger is one that you may or may not have heard. The other one is a core XY, and then there's resin printers, which are more the first type, the similar to the bed slingers. Why they call them a bed slinger? The term bed slinger is from the FDM fixed deposition modelling. No, that's a type of printer. That's the one that uses the 1.75mm plastic rod. that goes around a roller and comes in and is deposited on the model. Since then, there's been an introduction of Core XY printers. Core XY don't work the same way. They're much more sophisticated. They use a belt-driven system to move the print head in the XY, which is XY, and the print head moves only in the Z direction, so the print head's moving up and down. This system allows for faster and more accurate printing, making Core XY printers ideal for printing complex geometries. So that gives you an idea. Maybe too much idea, too much information can sometimes be, a little bit wrong. But having said that, I've owned a Prusa printer for about 4 years. It was great. It had a problem. It wasn't big enough. I then bought a Bamboo Labs printer, which I think is the bee's knees as far as printers go. Now, some of you young people might not understand that terminology. However, it is outperforming anything I've had in the past, including resin printers. I'm talking exceptional speeds that these printers go at. So it's a great printer, but again, it was reasonably cheap, but you had to do some work on it. You had to stabilise the platform, because if you start on a printer that hasn't got a level surface, it's never going to work. So having said that, you get an idea of what you can buy, what's out there, and as far as whether you buy those pieces of equipment, that's up to you. But as I said, one of the best places to find out whether they're any good is YouTube searches on 3D printers, and there are literally hundreds of thousands of them. Didn't realise how much room it's going to take up in the garage, and then I reinforced the concrete footings because of the shaking. But these things actually perform well, but you've got to make sure that you don't go overboard with them as far as getting speed, because speed's not the critical thing you need. What you need is a good result from a stable run of the printer. So I looked at the drawings. I had to do it in two halves as far as the base goes. A lot of ways of doing things, but most of us find out that the ways we do them the first time aren't the way they should be done.
The last few forums, I've sort of done something on, is anything new? What's new, etc. I seem to have got stuck in a rut on this one. I can actually talk about other things, but we'll do this again. So, we have another look. What's new? What's new in October 24? So I want to cover briefly a few areas, some which may interest you, some you may have heard about, some may not. What's new and interesting? What's new and interesting, particularly for modelling the New South Wales government railways? What's new in O-scale more generally? What's new from AliExpress and Temu? And what's generally new for me that you might find of interest? Modelling New South Wales. Look, we spend a lot of our time visiting our hobby shops. That's one of the greatest way of catching up with what's new at Bergs and the Scale Model Co. And Scale Model Co. in particular released these early this year, and I think Glenn had some up there today, but not the display models. So the GSV sheep wagon kit, which is $130, and you can also get a load of sheep. If you get a single deck, it's $27 roughly, or double that for the entire wagon. It's a great wagon. Also, there's an explosives fan, and I'm pretty sure Glenn had them up there today. That's only $120, which in no scale is pretty good. And these are easy kits to put together. They're really good. There's an ABV. That's also $120. And there's also a CV at a similar price. Well, in the UK, Bachmann has introduced their first range of O-scale 7mm, that's 7mm, the same scale that we generally use in New South Wales, narrow gauge range. And there's a range of 4 Hunslet vehicles in this range. And they come available either DCC or non-DCC. That particular model there about £263, which should make it around the $500 mark in Australia. Look, they're great little models. I'll give you another view so you can see it a bit closer. There's been some interesting reviews in the UK from them. They are not, as you might expect, all made of cast metal. They are primarily plastic. The footplates it's on are metal and the chassis is obviously metal. So they are relatively light, but they are really rather beautifully made, and there's a whole range, and the finishes are very impressive. Give you some idea. I mean, that's obviously considerably larger than full size, and they really are quite attractive little model. With the most obvious question, is there a cheaper way? This sounds interesting. Is there a cheaper way to start? Well, there is actually, and I might pass this one around. Now, I think the thing I'm passing around is a complete kit for a ship. It's not in a great big box, hasn't got masses of documentation, but it has enough documentation. It doesn't have material for the sail. It's actually got everything that you need except the glue and the paint to produce a little model for a very attractive price. The end result looks a little bit like that, or if you like that. And the price, $17.85. Thanks, that's all.
Question, John. Can you